I'm Marco Pinter.
And what's the story behind your art? What's the name of it?
So this piece is the third in a series called the Object Permanence series. And each piece in the series is addressing and exploring the idea of objects that appear in the real world or the virtual world and how we connect those in our brains. So babies around the time between they're 9 and 11 months old get this ability, their brains get wired for object permanence. So if you pass an object behind an obstruction before that age, they can't see it. And after that age, they realize it's there and their brain tracks the trajectory of the object. So the same thing is happening here. So we've got objects in the graphical virtual world, and they travel between the screens, and at times they have no existence, and yet they exist in our minds. We really, our brains are wired to see them when they're between the screens. And also what you're seeing now is at times these graphical objects come out of the screen and they impact physical sculptures and cause them to move.
Interesting.
And this particular piece, which is the third in the series, is called Non-Dual, and in it I'm exploring different sculptures that will look completely different in a different position. So this one on the right is very abstract, but when it's at a 45-degree angle, it has a completely different composition. And then
the plastic thing next to it?
Yes, right. And then on the left, these gold elements, when they're impacted from the top, and when they're at rest, they're in sort of an embracing position. But then when they receive this impact out of the graphical world, they move into what can be a menacing position, or at times it looks like they're breathing. And all that's created in our brains. So really, the viewer here is half the creator of this art. We kind of imbue behaviors to these abstract objects based on the way we're wired. And we see them traveling in our minds when they're not visible because of the way we're wired. So hopefully it draws attention, lets you kind of think about, gee, what I think I see in the real world maybe isn't real. It's the way I'm wired to perceive things.
What led you to doing this type of art?
Well, I've done some study in cognitive psychology, and also I've always been really interested in dance and sculpture. And what I didn't mention is there's actually a 4.5-minute choreographic loop here. So this was kind of a coming together from a technology background, a sculpture and dance interest, and also an interest in cognitive psychology.
And what do you do for a living? Is this art?
I spend about half my time on this, and then I also work in the robotics industry for half the time.
And what lessons did you learn making this piece?
Well, it's been quite a haul to get to this point, and I went through a lot of really mechanical and structural problems, and so I think I learned a lot from my process, and also I understand more about the kind of choreography I want to explore with the sculptures in the future that I didn't have time to do here.
Like what, for example?
Well, I believe that...
Could you stand?
Yes.
Just turn, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I believe that kinetic sculpture, if we actually explore it in a choreographic sense, it can become much more meaningful, and we can do a lot with it. A lot of kinetic sculpture just turns around and around, and that's all it does. And you might have 3 elements of the kinetic sculpture, but they're each turning around and around. This uses robotic technology, so you can get very fine, complex trajectories of the sculptures over time. And so with further exploration of that, I want to look at sort of taking choreographic techniques into the world of kinetic sculpture.
Do you have a philosophy of life?
Well, one thing, in a sense, I would say, when I told you about reflecting on the way we're wired and what we perceive and don't perceive, I think that if we all didn't believe what our brains are telling us so much and kind of looked at things in a broader sense, the world might be a better place.
Thank you. And your name again is?
Marco Pinter.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for coming.
All right, collaborating on the